This live stream is brought to you by Still and Evergreen Garden Care. Still is Australia's most trusted brand of garden power tools, backed by 95 years of German engineering excellence. To get your hands on their range, visit your local Still dealer today or visit still.com.au. Evergreen Garden Care and their market-leading brands are some of the best known and trusted consumer brands within the garden care market. To be inspired and easily create and maintain your garden, head to lovethegarden.com.
Garden Express are Australia's leading mail-order gardening service, offering a wide range of quality garden products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show you jump online and visit their website.
Hello and welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. So excited to be back with you again today. We are streaming right across the country, actually from quite a few multiple pages. The Garden Gurus Facebook page, the Still Facebook page, Garden Gurus Express Facebook, and our very own YouTube channel. Welcome to gardening. Welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. I'm so excited. Sue McDougall, I was with you last week. I get to enjoy your company once again this week. We are talking all things gardening. It's so exciting this time of the year. I just absolutely love, and I can honestly say there's this sense of anticipation in the air. That's my total favourite time. And with across the country, most areas are forecast sunny, a little bit of cloud, but, ranging from 17 degrees in Melbourne to 26 here in Perth, it is perfect. If you're not doing anything else, to spend a little bit of time in the garden. Not only it's good for the soul, it's good for the environment. It's actually good for everyone. And those autumn colours, I bet, wherever you are looking absolutely outstanding. Now, we've got so much coming up on the show today. Don't forget to send us your comments, ask your questions in the comments page, because that's what it's all about, being interactive and finding out what's happening in the garden right across the country. And if you've got a query happening, what is a little bit unusual, maybe you've got something to brag about, we'd be delighted to hear from you. We're talking to our good friend David Van Berkel. Last week he actually highlighted some roses, but today he's sharing a fantastic Garden Expresser offer of the week with us. You can't miss it. These are one of my favourite. Actually, every plant's my favourite, but these are particularly stunning. And I'll be showing you a plant that I've got growing in my garden, actually two. I'm so proud of, and it's the flavour of it. No, maybe that's giving away a bit too much, but you'll enjoy it. Hopefully you can find one to grow in your own garden. And also, have you ever thought of using dung beetles to improve your garden soil? Well, we're talking to entomologist John Feehan, who's going to show us how it works. There are millions and millions of dung beetles across the country working really hard for us. He's got a fascinating story, and he's known as the dung beetle expert or the farmer's friend, and his life is being dedicated to dung beetles always. And some fantastic information that while we talk broadacre and agriculture on a large scale, some of these concepts is exactly what we're trying to do in our own backyard, our own front yard, maybe down at the park. Something's happening. Gardening, I often say, and I always will say, is all about the soil. If you get the soil right, you'll find your plants just thrive, and it makes it so much easier. Also, if our soil's right, we tend to have less problems with weeds. But to find out a little bit more about the garden, join us on the journey on the Garden Gurus Facebook Live today. So excited to be here once again. And maybe I'm making it a little bit selfish, but Perth's forecast is 26 degrees and sunny. So if you've got today, enjoy the garden, that's for sure. Don't forget to add, like I said earlier, add your comments or ask your questions in the comments section. Maybe you can tell me what your favourite winter flower is or autumn flower is. I'd love to hear that, because we've got some brilliant plants around at the moment. There's this sense of anticipation in the air. Some plants come to life. Tend to get forgotten about a little bit in spring, but what's looking gorgeous in your garden. You can kick it off with us with our comments and inspiration. Maybe you'll inspire some other gardeners across the country. A couple of questions to start with from Robin, who's in WA. It's got spider mite on a snail creeper. Now, this snail creeper was planted about 3 or 4 weeks ago, absolutely bolted away with this beautiful warm weather that we're having in WA. But the spider mite is causing a problem. Now, spider mite, you will see, it's one of those insects that love the dry. So if you've got it in a protected position or a plant in a protected position, you'll find that underneath the leaves, if you start getting slight silvering, little bit of hair, sort of fur or webbing, that's very fine. And you can't see it very easily. On the top of the leaf, you'll see this yellowing and the dropping of the older leaves, and just general dullness of the leaf. A couple of things could easily be spider mite. Now, if you've got really good eyesight, you can see them if you look up close. If your eyesight's not good, grab a neighbour or a friend and they'll be able to help you identify them. But a couple of things about spider mite. They breed prolifically. Every 10 days is a life cycle of spider mite. They build up resistance to any chemicals. And that's why I always say, if you can spray underneath the leaf with a little bit of water whenever you water your plants, they hate the wet, and that's why they're harbouring underneath the beautiful, healthy leaves, particularly in protected positions. But also, if you can spray with Whitehall at the moment, any temperatures below 30 degrees, and you'll be able to probably suffocate some of the spider mite and just break the life cycle. If you can just do that, if 10 days time as well, you probably should break the life cycle and be able to break the life cycle enough that the plant can grow healthy and strong. Often happens when we've got plants growing under verandas, in shady positions, in protected positions, particularly also if we've got gardens underneath trees. Spider mite's one of the things that we can easily manage. Also in spring, if you're thinking about spider mite, maybe that's a topic for spring. You can put predatory insects in your garden and they'll just be able to control the spider mite. We've also got another question from Perth. Kim, do I feed my bromeliads? Well, if you've got bromeliads growing, absolutely feed them. They do very well with a controlled release fertilizer just lightly around the soil. There's always this question. I often hear people saying, no, don't feed my bromeliads at all, and I just let them grow on their own. But I think they do a little bit better with a bit of fertilizer, and controlled release fertilizer. I think anything that's also going to help improve the soil at the same time makes a big difference to bromeliads. They are one of the plants for dry area shade, for high humid areas, for brilliant colour, foliage colour. Maybe that's the plant that's inspiring you in your garden this autumn. We've got lots of questions. Keep them coming. We are talking winter plants and also this time of the year. And to join us, so excited to talk to David again, David Van Berkel from Garden Express, because he's going to tell us the offer of the week. Before he does that, we're welcoming to one of those winter perennials that's just fantastic, isn't it, David?
It is. Good morning, Sue. How are you going?
I'm smiling because this weather is divine. You know, one thing about Perth, it doesn't rain very often sometimes, but we do, I think, have really good autumn weather.
Yeah, for sure. And we just had 2 of those days. Today's a little bit overcast and quite a bit of rain overnight, but 2 days, 25, 26, and it does make you smile, doesn't it?
It does, and this sense of anticipation. Do you feel this as a grower and as a gardener? I think we all get this sense of anticipation of what's going to happen for winter and spring, and it's like a new beginning this time of the year, isn't it?
It is. I think, whilst that April 1st might be the Joker's Day, May 1st really is the change of those seasons. It sort of almost becomes official, and I always look forward to the start of winter as our dormant berry canes and roses and things turn up, from the paddocks, and it's just a beautiful time. So, yeah, I was listening to what you were saying and agreeing with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, it certainly is. We've always got a smile on our face, that's for sure. I think under our facade of gardeners, we're frustrated farmers, really, isn't it? And we do look forward to the rain and what's happening because everything's so dependent on it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, now it's a great time. And today we want to talk a little bit about the hellebores. So I find that really interesting what you're saying. There's not a lot of things that actually do their active growing during the winter. And this is a really unique plant, something to get a bit excited by. Colour that you get in the shade, colour that you get in winter, it is very exciting and also makes you smile.
Yeah, it certainly does, and this is why I'm so fascinated about hellebores. And I'm always looking. We focus on trees in gardens, and we're talking about garden design. But once we get our stages of our trees established, people move into a garden. We want that shade, but we're always looking for plants that grow underneath canopy of trees, can cope with that, maybe a little bit of root competition, cope with that bit of shade. And it's a changing market, but we go to our garden centres and all we see is these beautiful perennials that need full sun.
Yeah, or you see a lot of plants that are just green.
Yes.
Beautiful green plants that go under trees, and it's wonderful. But it is a little bit hard to, and I find even as a grower and a gardener and a nurseryman, that still is one of the challenges to find a plant that can sustain, that colour and life, and actually deliver a little bit of bang around those deciduous trees. So I've got that in my garden, a patch of 5 or 6 gum trees and a couple of palms in there that struggle through the winter. But underneath that, I've got my hosta and hellebore garden.
Oh, two of my favourite plants. Tell us about hellebores, also known as winter roses. Is that what really known as anymore, or is it just hellebores?
I don't hear the winter rose so much anymore, but definitely, old school. That's what they're also known as. So for sure, hellebores, winter flowering. Don't plant them too deep, so the crown's just below the surface, doing its growing through winter and into spring. But the flowers are there and ready to come. And then in a cooler climate, they're evergreen in the summer months as well.
Oh, well, you've got that beautiful foliage. It's always so fascinating. So now you've got Garden Express has got a double collection and a single collection. Which one would you choose, David?
Uh, Straight for the doubles. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. They're probably going to already the most popular one. The singles are delightful. I mean, we can't get away from the beautiful bicolours that we've got now. And in hellebores, you get a lot of varieties with some burgundy throughout it somewhere, particularly like the white-edged picotee. So the singles are also delightful, but I'm a big fan of the doubles.
Well, I'm going to balance it out for you. I love the simplicity of the singles.
Fantastic. Well, let's see what the listeners are and the viewers are going to go for. But certainly the doubles just pip it. And also like in our fuchsia collections, the doubles are always that little bit more popular as well. So maybe people just want a little bit more out of their blooms than the singles.
So tell us the varieties in the double collection. You've got three plants for $33. Now this is valued at $41.70, so fantastic saving. And with a single collection, you've got three different plants. So I imagine a beautiful range of the best single ones. They're valued at it's valued at $38.70, but selling them for $30.
$30, yeah. So both collections are 20% off. The doubles are a little bit more rare or unique, I suppose. So there's a little bit of a premium on those. But yeah, three plants, 75 ml pots that we've been growing on till they're ripe and ready to ship and to probably give you your first blooms this winter.
Now, if you've never joined in on the Garden Express offer of the week before, it's so exciting to get plants in the mail. It just happens magically, and you go, wow, how does that happen? You can be guaranteed, if you've never done it, your plants will arrive in good condition. Now, these hellebores, say if I ordered them today, David, when do I expect to get them, depending where I live?
Depending on where you live. So for WA, we ship once a week at the moment, or otherwise once a fortnight. We have quarantine issues where we have to get the plants through your agricultural department, get sign off that everything's done properly and to your gardens. And we like to do that quite fresh. So we'll send on a Wednesday, Thursday, arriving in your state on the Monday. So it's done all that travel time. And then out to the gardeners around WA. The same for Tasmania, and of course up north as well. There's more states now with quarantine restrictions.
No, that's good news, because you get the plants just while you may get around to thinking about planting them. You've got the space ready. Top 3 things we need to do, David, if you're ordering hellebores. What do I need to do to the soil to get it ready to plant to ensure success?
They're not vigorous feeders. Once they're established, a good little bit of feed after flowering will kick them along. Sort of loamy soil and definitely some free draining soil. And they're not really heavy on the water in summer, which is a bit of a juxtaposition because in summer you're going to water anyway. So hence the free draining nature is probably the best. They will do well in a large pot, maybe a hanging planter. A lot of people put them sort of higher up in rockeries and stuff, or on a bank, so that you can see those drooping flowers more magnificently.
Oh, well, if you've never seen them, that's great. Great. Chase it up. Great advice. I love that free draining idea. And that's true. We do tend to water in summer. Some areas when the soil is a bit heavy, maybe a little bit too much. That's good to know that they need that free draining soil. Definitely worth it. Check them out. Adding colour to the garden, once again, is so important at this time of the year. I get so excited. I've always got more plants to plant at my back door than I have time to do it. David, I'm sure as a nurseryman, you're the same.
I bring stuff home, and my wife says to me, "Now, when are you going to find time to put those in the garden?" And it's just a struggle to beat them from drying out, or sometimes they get returned back to work to sell in the nursery shop because I just won't get the time. But it's so much fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is so much fun. Maybe we'll catch up with you very soon to find out what we're going to inspire people with next week, something new and crazy. I know you've opened up your rose orders, your online rose orders. If you want more information, visit gardenexpress.com.au. Don't forget, double collection of hellebores, 3 plants for $33. Now, that's a saving of 20%, only if you're a Garden Gurus Facebook Live viewer, or through, if you've watched Garden Gurus on the weekend, valued at $41.70, so a saving of 20%. Also, the single collection, I must say, David, I know it's not your favourite, but it's mine. Check them out, 3 plants for $30. I love the simplicity and the delicate flowers of the single flowers. So check those out too, valued at $38.70.
Absolutely, Sue. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care. We'll see what inspires you in your garden, your autumn garden next week, I'm sure. Look forward to that very much. Now, don't forget, if you've got hellebores doing so well in your garden, give us a comment. Love to hear. What are your tips to grow hellebores in your garden? Maybe we can share that information around. And what's looking amazing in your garden at the moment? Or if you've got a question about your garden, what's happening? Some bugs taking over, or if you've got a tree you don't know what it is, yeah, put in the comment section. What we will do now is head across the country, find out what's happening. Maybe in Sandra's garden, Katrina will work with, head up to Townsville. And, it'd be so warm in Townsville at the moment. This is the best time of the year to be there. Katrina asks, I have tiny rosellas on the bush. How long until they are ready to pick? Depends actually how healthy the plant is, Katrina, and how well it's growing. If they're tiny and they've just started to colour up and looking beautiful, I suspect it still will be 4 to 6 weeks away, depending on the weather and when the flower buds dropped and what's happening. So just keep an eye out on them. They are really, the bigger they are, the healthier the plant is, the more established the plant is, the better they go. So if they're tiny, they're only about a pea size, you do need to get them up, probably diameter of at least double, at least that size, even 3 or 4 times that size, and they'll be ready to pick. Maybe you can make Rosella jam from those. That'll be just gorgeous, particularly with ham or something like that. Maybe cheese, be beautiful. Heading to Townsville once again. Sandra, I have brown turkey fig and a dwarf Pinkerton avocado. How far should I plant these from my in-ground pool and low-set house? Do I need a second avocado of a different variety? Sandra, the fig is something I would never plant in a backyard, contrary to popular belief. That's one thing I don't recommend. If you've got a fig tree in your backyard, depending how large your plant is, you need it at least 20 metres away from a pool. Even further, I would recommend. One good thing, if you've got a fig tree in your backyard, down the bottom of your backyard, your neighbour will have all the roots. You won't, probably. So it's a good thing for you, not a good thing for your neighbour, but the root system is relatively or very destructive of a fig tree, and that's not something that I'd feel comfortable about recommending putting in a garden. Large bowl, a large pot, a large urn, figs will grow and do very well. And just to give you a little bit of context, I've got a fig tree that's 25 metres away from a veggie garden, and every 12 months I have to dig up that veggie garden and redo the soil because the root system is in that area very, very quickly within 12 months, and it's masses of roots, and we just have to dig it up. And sometimes the root diameter is about, that far, 3 centimetres at least, and that's just in 12 months. So yes, you do need also a different variety of avocado. Some avocados are self-fertile and they'll do well on their own, but if you can get a self-fertile, a cross-pollinator, they will be able to get or set more fruit. But one thing you can do is graft or bud another variety onto an avocado. I've seen avocado tree established that's got 7 different varieties on one tree growing particularly well. So that's something that maybe you can aspire to, having a few different avocados on a tree. Let me know if you have got an avocado with lots of buds, lots of different varieties growing particularly well in your backyard, and if you've budded them yourself. Avocados are just so productive once they grow really well in a backyard, and a great tree, evergreen tree, and perfect for a residential garden. Hope that helps, Sandra. Now we're heading to, not sure actually, but Dorothy's got a question about a tea tree copper glow. Is it suitable to plant around a swimming pool as a hedge? Absolutely. Tea trees are beautiful. Now, if it's particularly fiberglass pool, tea trees have no problem at all. They're not destructive as far as a root system go, but it's extensive. So it's massed exactly around the plant, but it's not going to cause a problem as it keeps going further. Not like a fig tree as an example, but if you keep it as a small hedge, trim it. Tea trees are a great hardy shrub that just absolutely masses of flowers when they flower, but also copper glow's got beautiful foliage as well. So definitely enjoy that, Dorothy. Now, from Queensland again. Queensland's on fire today. I hope the weather's going well, and after all that rain, probably a little bit too much rain, but the rain you've had in recent months, I hope the gardens are looking absolutely fantastic. From Aphany, what is a good slow-release granular fertilizer for all plants, fruits and roses? I know about Power Feed with Troforte M. Now, I've actually used Power Feed Granular when it first came out, and I put it on my citrus trees. I put it on a standard grevillea. I put it on some gardenias, some succulents, and I thought, oh, well, I'll test this and see how it goes. And I must say, pretty impressed. It did really well. So as a controlled release or a slow release organic fertilizer that's going to be available to the plant, whether you're growing it in pots or in the ground, I can say I did really well. And also being slow release, it's going to help just reduce the nutrients or release the nutrients gradually over time, and also improve the soil. And when we started today's Facebook Live, the Garden Gurus Facebook Live, we did say gardening is all about the soil, and improving the soil is so important no matter where you live. So if you've got the opportunity to use a fertilizer that's available to all plants, you can use it for standard plants, and it's going to help improve the soil. That makes a difference. So now there is a difference between slow release fertilizer and controlled release fertilizer. We often think that slow or refer to slow release fertilizers as being the organic based ones. Controlled release fertilizers are the prills and the granular fertilizers that release through temperature and moisture. So that's something like Osmocote is what we call a controlled release fertilizer, and then the organic based fertilizers are the slow release fertilizers. So well, that's how I distinguish the difference anyway, and I'm sure it helps. So yeah, pretty impressed with Power Feed Granular with Troforte. Tell me what you think of it if you've tried it and you're happy with the results. Now, it's exciting time. It is exciting time for me to show you or feature one of the plants that I've got growing absolutely spectacular in my garden. A few years ago, well, one of the journeys a few years ago, I'd say maybe 25 years ago, before they were trendy, before you see them around, I knew someone who was growing native limes and just got a couple in a nursery to test. And I happened to say, what are you doing with those limes? And he said, oh, I don't know. Do you want a couple? And I said, I'd love a couple. So I got hold of desert lime, ruby lime, at that time, planted in my garden, and I was totally impressed how well they've gone. So this is, at the moment, a plant that I've got in my garden. The flavour is absolutely divine. This is one called ruby lime. Now, they are grafted lime trees, small limes. They are prickly as anything. So the foliage, when you look at the foliage, you absolutely hate picking it, but you can see these little spines on it. So it's really good, actually, security if you've got it in your garden. And so it's very small, fine foliage, but as hardy as anything. At the moment, I've got it growing on a clay bank. It's got masses of fruit. Now, this fruit will stay on the plant from now. As it colours and as it ripens, it's got slightly pink flesh, and as it ripens, you will find that this develops really deep colour. So the ruby lime, totally impressed with, and it grows particularly well in a pot. The other one that I think you need to chase up is another one of the native ones. You might have heard a little bit about it, and that is the finger lime. Now, the finger lime is, when you look at the inside, all these are just starting to come up. These are just beautiful, beautiful little bursts of zest when you see them growing. The smell is absolutely divine. Small tree, fairly neat, so you can grow it really well in a pot. When I say neat, it's a lovely plant, takes full sun, small, slow growing. Mine's still 2 metre high, been absolutely not looked after at all, but so tough and hardy, and the fruit's just starting to come. So if you're looking for something a little bit different in your garden, you're looking for something that you'd like to add some unique flavours when you use for cooking, easy to grow. I can smell the fruit of them already. They just, check out the finger lime. See if you can chase one up, because I'm sure you'll be delighted to plant it. Beautiful terracotta pot, and it will do really well in about a 30 or 40 centimetre terracotta pot. In the garden, in a full sun spot, heavy clay soil. They are grafted onto hardy citrus rootstock, so you don't have to worry about them not growing in most areas of Australia. There was a lot of work put into a breeding program for our native limes, and it's fantastic to have your own tree that's very much part of Australia, and you can grow it really well. So if you've got a finger lime growing, tell us about it. Have you had success? It's taken me a little while for it to get to grow and do particularly well in the garden. So finger limes and also ruby limes, see if you can find them in your garden centre. You might have to order them. I know there's been some great ranges of them. Sometimes they're a little bit hard to find, but sometimes they're not. So enjoy them, and just be careful when you go to pick them, as a reminder, that foliage is very prickly. So just be careful of those spines, a little bit hard. You can see mine's got a little bit of a deficiency, and that's reflecting on, I actually haven't fed it anything for a couple of years. So now that it's fruiting, it's a good reminder. Isn't it always the case? People who've got gardens have always got too many jobs to do, good at telling everyone else how to look after their garden. But this is a reminder, seeing this deficiency on this plant, that it's time to put some controlled release fertilizer on it and some slow release fertilizer on it. Now we've got rain forecast this week here in Western Australia. So if you've got rain forecast wherever you are, throwing a little bit of blood and bone around controlled release fertilizer with organic base is going to, number one, help improve the soil, but also deliver nutrients to plants while the soil still has a little bit of soil temperature, soil warmth in it. Hopefully that's inspired you to plant a few fruiting trees of a difference this week, or chase them up even if you can. Don't forget, our Garden Express offer of the week is hellebores. Hopefully we've inspired you to plant some of those in your garden. If you've got an area that's a little bit shady and you can put some shade tolerant plants in. I have many of those shady places in my garden, that maybe hellebores are the plant for you. Now, so excited now to talk to you about dung beetles. Have you ever had or thought about using dung beetles to improve your soil in your garden? Gardening, the theme this morning is all about the soil. Now, dung beetles take organic matter underground. No matter where you live in Australia, I think we have got an advantage, particularly in agriculture areas, but also in residential areas, to use dung beetles to our advantage. They store massive amounts of carbon. They are our friend. They are working for us. And to find out a little bit more about it, the gentleman we know as a dung beetle expert, or refers to himself as the farmer's friend, is John Feehan. Good morning, John. Good evening. Oh, John, can you just unmute your mic so we can talk to you, so you can hear us? Where there's a little orange square there that says mute mic. If you can get that, that'll be fantastic for us. Now, you might be able to hear us. Dung. Where it says unmute mic, that'll be great. Let's go to a question. While you're unmuting your mic, we might talk about talk about something else and come back to you, John. We have a good episode of the Garden Gurus live, or Garden Gurus this weekend, and here's a sneak.
This week on the Garden Gurus, we'll be talking about pruning. In fact, we'll be talking about what you do with your prunings, because this has taken a lot of energy to grow into this beautiful branch. But instead of throwing it and putting it in the tip, I'm going to show you how you can convert it into magnificent mulch for your garden beds and save yourself money on buying compost this spring. It's all happening this Saturday on Channel 9. Make sure you check out your local guides.
Hopefully that's inspired you. Maybe we can turn into some compost. Yeah, there we are. We can actually hear you, John. Now, our farmer's friend, our dung beetle expert, joins us. Well, those little friends are working for you all the time. Great to talk to you, John. Can you tell us about dung beetles? They are the hardworking treasures of our soil, aren't they? John, we've just got a little bit of a problem here, technological hitch. Can you just close the link for us and rejoin? We can't actually hear you on Facebook, unfortunately. You can hear me, I can hear you, but Facebook can't hear us. Something's happening. That you, it's not you, don't worry. It's just what's happening with the cloud. I'm sure it is today. So what we'll do, we'll go through some questions while we're waiting to talk to John a little bit, right? So we've got from Tella, from Central Tablelands in New South Wales. I love the Banksia marginata. It's currently flowering profusely on the roadside. I agree with you, Tella. The Banksias are just absolutely amazing. We've got some incredible Banksias also right across the country. And when it's flowering, I'd be saying the same. They are just absolutely fantastic. And the ecosystem that belongs to Banksias, that'd be my favourite as well. From Niramala, the grasshoppers are decimating the leafy greens in my patch. They certainly are. I've almost lost an entire bok choy. I applied pesticides, but it doesn't seem to work. I've actually got that problem with things that are planting leafy greens. Grasshoppers are absolutely destructive. You'll find if you've got the grasshoppers eating everything, you'll find that we just got a voice here. Yep. There we go. There we go. We can see if we can, sorry, about technological hit. I'll get that right. Love technology when it works brilliantly, not so fantastic when it doesn't work brilliantly. So grasshoppers, back to grasshoppers. I've had a few people saying giant grasshoppers are absolutely decimating plants as well. What we can do, pesticide will work over time. One of the best things to use for grasshoppers, Nirmala, is to use neem oil. Now, neem oil works on, it's registered for grasshoppers, but it also works on breaking their breeding cycle. But that's so important. So it will take a little while to work as a contact, but it's very effective and also registered. So eco-neem or neem oil will be the control of choice for you, and also can be used for organic gardeners. So hopefully that fixes it. But sometimes just a physical barrier, even just bird netting, will help get rid of the grasshoppers as well. And I do, maybe a bit of a heads up, I do know that there's quite a few, unfortunately, eggs with a awesome moisture around, summer moisture around. There are a few eggs hatching at the moment, so it might be a problem that's happening across Australia. To southwest of WA, that's looking gorgeous at the moment. What's the best mulch to use in the garden? Now, that's a question from Cheryl. Depends what you're looking for, Cheryl. I always think that I probably break mulches into three different categories. One of them is coarse, chunky mulches are really good for native gardens, standard gardens where we just want to get the water to soak through to the soil. What we find is if we use fine mulches that aren't coarse and chunky, what they will do is not allow the water to soak through to the soil level. And once they absorb the moisture, and then the plant roots come up to the soil surface and defeats the reason why we're putting a mulch on the garden in the first place. So of course, chunky mulch, allow the water. What we want to put mulch on the garden for is to reduce evaporation and allow the water, keep the root system cool. So we want to shade the soil. So it allows the water to soak through to that garden area and that soil so the plants can actually get it. So that's a coarse, chunky mulch. Stones work brilliantly for a mulch in a different time of the, depending on where you are. So that, because they allow the water to soak through to the soil, inorganic stones, they never break down. So they're pretty effective, and you can get some gorgeous decorative stones. And then you've got composting mulches. So if you've got a mulch that you really want to improve the soil at the same time, as it breaks down, it feeds the soil. So all those amazing microbes and things will look fantastic for your garden and improve the soil, but also uses the mulch to your advantage and improves the soil at the same time. So depending on your garden situation, how well the mulch goes or what you want to put. I've got 3 different mulches, and I use 3 different mulches depending on what part of the garden is what's happening. Also, the other thing I do is use those autumn leaves to my advantage, help them break down and feed the soil at the same time. So we head to Victoria. In Belgrave, Margaret asks, my beautiful old pink peony rose was pruned and had no flowers last year. How do I bring this amazing plant back to its glory? Oh, Margaret, that's really hard. If it was a tree peony, what we need to do is just wait for time. Tree peonies and getting them to grow, getting them to strengthen. Sometimes they don't actually like being pruned back into their hardwood. So we need to really feed the soil, improve the soil, and make a big difference, if you can, to getting that root system to grow extensively. And really, composting mulch, like I was just saying earlier, the composting mulch will make a big difference to improving that. Query on another plant. I'm not sure where Dorothy is, but when do I spray for curly leaf on my peach tree? Dorothy, depending where you live, what we can do with curly leaf is get the plant to, as it's dropping its leaves, you spray then. So you can spray with a copper-based spray then. And then as it's dropping its leaves, what happens is that the little spores underneath the leaf scar, so this is the leaf bud coming up, so this little bud over the top or scar over the top, all the spores live under there. So if you can get them as they're dropping their leaves, and then as it shoots away, the spores don't go in underneath there. So as the leaves are dropping, if you can, and we've got dry weather, you can spray with a copper-based spray then. But if you don't get to it as the leaves are dropping, you'll find just as the buds are starting to colour and also swell up, that's when we spray for copper at that time of the year. So you'll find that the peaches, nectarines, it's worth spraying if your fruit trees have still got leaves on them. Worth spraying at the moment if you can. Copper-based spray, apricots, peaches, and nectarines will make a big difference. Hopefully that helps. All those nectarine trees that just absolutely love fruit, and you can put them, get them to grow brilliantly, makes a huge difference. Now, hopefully we've got John with us now. Hopefully he can hear us and make sure we're in position again. He was talking about improving the soil and is the dung beetle expert. Let's see if we can introduce Don again. John again, I should say, and in position, make sure we can start again. I'm sorry about that for those people that have been with us for Garden Gurus Facebook. That's the joys of life, Facebook. Technology across the country, sometimes the links don't really work. And I think John actually lives in regional New South Wales, and particularly where it's a bit cold. Absolute passion about that East Coast and getting dung beetles. Have you thought about dung beetles in your garden and what it can do for our organic matter to the soil? What it can do difference? He's giving us the quotes. 1.5 million tonnes of cow manure every day lays on Australian soils. We need to take that to our advantage. Good morning or good afternoon now, John. Sorry, we can hear you hopefully now.
It's good. Well, I just have to correct you there. It's 500,000 tonnes per day.
True. If I can find out, if I can.
Can you hear me?
It might be something on my.
Just say, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me, John?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You too. We've got it. We're on again. $1.5 million. We're going to pick up where we left off. 1.5 million tonnes of cow manure every day. We've got an advantage to use for our soils.
I have to correct you there. It is 500,000 tonnes.
Oh, 500,000. That's my. That's my writing.
That is just cow dung.
Yes.
We do have sheep, alpaca, horse, and everything else, but so the figure would be much more than 500,000 tonnes of the dung beetles are capable of burying if they're working well.
Yeah, when they make a huge difference. Basically, our soils are ancient, low phosphorus soils in Australia that would benefit from the use of dung beetles. Now, you were part of a project from the CSIRO that closed down in 1992. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, early 90s, 91, 92, the funding ran out. And there was a whole team of us working on the program. We brought into Australia over 50 species of dung beetles, and we got 44 of those out into the paddocks through the quarantine system. And when the funding ran out, there was just one of those 44 species that we had released had reached its climatic and geographic limits. So there was a lot more work to be done. So I set about privately trying to continue distributing the beetles, and I now distribute 20 different species, and I have released about 6,500 colonies of beetles, and that equates to about 7.5 million beetles that I have handled, packed up, and distributed to other locations throughout the country, and even some overseas.
So when we're talking dung beetles, what's the advantage to home gardeners? What's the advantage to all of Australia? Why should we care?
It's not so much home gardeners. You see, the cattle graze in the paddocks, and that's where they do the most good. Although there are some species that will bury dog dung in backyards. In fact, you have one of them around Perth and in the southwest of WA. But the main benefit is to enrich the soil in beef grazing paddocks. You see, the 500,000 tonnes of dung, it's distributed, it's already out on the properties, it's already in the paddocks, it's already spread. And the trouble is it sits on top of the ground where it breeds buffalo fly in northern Australia, bush fly, which affects the southwest of WA very badly. And the dung pollutes the paddocks. It then gets washed into the creeks, rivers, estuaries, and oceans. And it's nature never intended that valuable product to go to waste. In fact, I have a photograph here, and this is a typical scene in a farmer's paddock. It represents probably just a few months of breeding, grazing in that paddock, but it does point out just what vast quantities of dung gets dropped in paddocks in Australia, and particularly if it's not covered up with grass or broken up with machinery. Now we can go from that situation to this situation. Now this photograph was taken on a dairy farm south of Bunbury, and there were 250 head of cattle grazed in that paddock for 3 nights. And I took this photograph 2 days after the cattle were removed. And there's the result. Now, this paddock was on a 21-day rotational system. The grass will grow again over that 21 days. The cattle will come around again. And even in 1 year, there would hardly be a single square metre of that paddock that did not have a tunnel system produced under the grass. And
so the carbon that's sequestered would be huge.
Yes, well, this is where this comes in. This is an illustration. It's a CSIRO illustration, and it just points out just where the dung beetle tunnels are dug. The depth of those tunnels is down to a depth of about 300 millimetres, and the diameter is between 600 and 700 millimetres. Now, you just imagine that 2 litres or 2.5 litres of dung being taken underground with the aeration effect. The microbial activity gets going, earthworms move into the habitat, and I take school kids out into the paddocks around Canberra, and I'll put 4 litres of water in 2 buckets. I get one of the students to pour it on that tunnel system that's been produced, and the whole 4 or 5 litres just dissipates into the soil in 4 or 5 seconds. I then step 2 metres away, use the same student, the other bucket of water, and we pour it out on the ground, and we watch it run off down towards the creek for 4 or 5 metres. Now, as simple as that little demonstration is, it is speaking volumes, particularly in heavy rain periods. Heavy rain washes herbicides, insecticides, wetting agents, fertilizers, and organic matter from dung and urine and other sources into the creeks, rivers, estuaries and oceans. So when a paddock is perforated with millions of these dung beetle holes, those chemicals and nutrients get down into the tunnel system. Gravity continues taking the water downhill, down the slope, and the soil filters out all the nasties, and we end up with much clearer water in the creeks, rivers,
well,
estuaries.
that's actually so important again, John, with what's happening with our extreme weather events all around Australia. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, particularly in summer. We've had it in WA, you've had it over east this year. We just had a comment from Margaret. Thank you, John. You're a wealth of incredible knowledge. Being known as the Dung Beetle man, I think while we're talking agriculture, it really is a shared responsibility. I think single-handedly I would say that the dung beetles would be helping the environment more than we could ever imagine. Correct. Those tunnels of holding onto that water and being a giant sponge is, what it does to erosion, what it will do to our waterways, makes a huge difference collectively.
Correct.
We've got an opportunity to improve our soil. We need to probably acknowledge the humble dung beetle a lot more than what we do across horticulture and across probably agriculture does it better, but definitely across horticulture.
Correct. In fact, dung beetles produce all these benefits without tractors, without machinery, without a farmer's time and resources, without fossil fuels, without producing any CO2. In fact, they actually sequester it in the soil and produce all sorts of benefits. Now, I've got a clod of material here, and this clod is almost like a mild mix of concrete. It is so hard. There's been no root penetration in that material for millions of years. And there are only 2 things that can dig through it. Large tractors with a ripper and dung beetles. Dung beetles have dug those holes in that material, and when they do so, and they take the dung down underneath into those holes, they enrich and rejuvenate this poor soil. In fact, when dung is buried properly, the area that the beetles take the dung into is roughly the diameter of a bicycle wheel. So those earlier photographs that I showed you, you just imagine that the soil around each of these cow pads is enriched to the diameter of a bicycle wheel. Just how good and how fertile that paddock would become if, after 4 years, 6 years and 8 years, if all that dung was buried throughout the year.
We need to get those dung beetles on we are fast running out of time. Could talk to you for hours, John. The environmental story is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. If you would like to contact John, just search up the Dung Beetle expert. You will find him, and he's absolutely passionate about dung beetles. I think all of us have got a lot more to learn. Very much greater understanding of the environment. Thanks for sharing your story this morning or this afternoon, John. So much appreciated, and we'll catch you soon.
Okay, an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, so lovely to chat to someone who's passionate about what he does. Imagine if John didn't take on the dung beetle fight for all those dung beetles, make a huge difference. Thanks once again, John. Thinking we've got a greater understanding or a greater appreciation of those dung beetles that are in our backyards, in our paddocks that might be beyond our backyards. Imagine what they're doing and what we can get them to do for our environment in Australia. Now, should we go back to our comments and our questions? Thanks for them coming in. We're absolutely delighted for you to be part of Garden Guru's Facebook Live and join us. From Irene, I've got 3 different finger limes in pots, and this year I was lucky to have nesting finches. The spines are a great protection for these little birds. I agree with you, Irene, because the finger line spines are pretty nasty, aren't they? So actually, and that's one of the reasons why it's important to have thick, dense foliage plants in the garden, maybe some prickly foliage plants also in the garden, because it does definitely help the environment and the natural environment. From Ken of Perth, I've been feeding my potted edible ginger plant a mixture of sea salt and power feed weekly since early April. Now that the weather is getting colder, how should I look after my ginger plant? Ken, your ginger plant is actually going to start to die back as the weather gets a little bit cooler. If it's multi-stemmed and looking absolutely fantastic, you'll find as it dies back, then you can harvest your ginger, particularly in Perth. If you're living in a warm part of Australia, you don't actually have that problem, but definitely you'll find that one second. There we are. You'll find that the ginger will be able to cope in warmer climates. In Perth, starts to die back. Bring it back into a little bit of a warmer position, like it's in a mini glasshouse, humid environment, and it should keep growing for a bit longer. But it will slow down. You will be prepared to have a few dead leaves on the branches, and that's unfortunately just what happens. But the benefit of that is that you can harvest some of the ginger. So fresh ginger is just amazing, just incredible and easy to grow. From Sandra from Central Queensland, back up to Queensland again. My roses are horrific. They're very old roses. When can I cut them back, and what fertilizer should I use, or should I just take them out? They've been old. They've always been horrific. It might be the climate where you are, but if this year they're looking particularly bad, you can ideally, as the weather cools down, so where you are a bit warmer, you'll find that you'd be trimming them in mid-June, about 5 weeks' time, and getting to grow again as the weather warms up. Organic, blood and bone based, a little bit of sulfate of potash to thicken the cell walls and make the plants nice and healthy. So they're less susceptible to black spot and powdery mildew if there's any humid weather coming through. But chop them back. We have got here in WA a problem called chili thrips that are causing burning of the leaves, distorted flowers, and a real problem with roses. So hopefully you don't have chili thrips on your roses anytime soon, because it's not an insect or a problem that I wish upon anyone that's growing roses at all. Margaret from Victoria asks us, when is the best time to take seeds from hellebore flowers? So as they come up to flower, as the petals drop, as the seed pods develop, Margaret, that's when we need to. So it's actually late spring. You'll find coming as the plants go through the winter time, through their growing time, and as they go slow down and mature, that's the best time to harvest the seed from your hellebores. From Victoria to South Australia, why are the leaves of my ficus gem curling? I put them inside. Sometimes they do in low light, Jan. You'll find if the conditions aren't right, the plant will go into what we call stress. Often with ficus, if it's in a low light position or it's not right, they'll drop their leaves. The second thing they'll do is curl. Sometimes they'll curl up, sometimes they will curl down and underneath. So depending which way they're curling, make sure that there's enough humidity in the inside. If they're inside and it's slightly dark, if there's low humidity, so if the indoor room is heated by a reverse cycle air conditioning system, you'll find there's just not as much humidity or moisture in the air. So misting your ficus leaves every couple of days with a little fine mist sprayer will help a lot. Hopefully that helps your plants. It's from Cherie. How do I get rid of, or how do you get rid of little black flying bugs in soil? I'm imagining, Cherie, that the little black flying bugs that you've got in your soil are in potted plants, or if they're in the ground where the soil's particularly damp. Maybe it's the adult fungal gnat. There's quite a few different species of fungal gnat, but there's one that does cause a problem, little larvae. They like midges flying around your soil. What we want to do is dry the soil out. If it tends to go sour, particularly inside if you've got a plant sitting in water, that can be a problem. But you'll find actually beta bug, drenching the soil with beta bug solution does tend to help fungal gnats. Drying out the soil helps fungal gnats. And also you can get a fungal gnat barrier material. So inside for your indoor plants, you can actually buy, it's just actually very coarse, very fine rock, scoria, and then you put a layer of that, a 1 centimetre thick layer of that on your indoor plants, and that tends to stop your adult fungal gnats being able to lay eggs and breaks the life cycle. Often we get calls with people who tend to keep their indoor plants too wet, and the fungal gnats are just absolutely around and causing lots of problems. And if you look at the root system, you'll find it's a tiny little larvae about 2 millimeters long that curls up. If you find that, they will come and eat the roots of your plants. But don't fear, not every fungal gnat is a problem or damaging to a plant. Some of them in a way are good. So you'll find, hopefully that helps your fungal gnats, Sherry. Now another question about aphids. How do I get rid of aphids on my Hoyas? There's lots of ways we can get rid of aphids, and they are flying around everywhere. Had many calls through the week about aphids, particularly on citrus trees as well, sometimes new growth on plants. Aphids are opportunistic feeders, I say. They fly in and they suck the sap. They'll just come in and it seems to appear overnight. And you think, where have they come from? They weren't there before. So aphids you can get rid of as softly, or as you can be as brutal as you like. We can hose them off with a fine mist spray or a high pressure spray. We can squash them if you want to squash them, so a cotton glove or a cotton piece of fabric will be able to squash them. Or you can use a contact spray, so beta bug garlic and chili spray that you make up yourself, or you can buy garlic and chili sprays. You can use Natrasoap. You can then start to use a dust on them as well. But I find squashing most of them if you can, hosing them off. Some will fly back. They're pretty persistent for a few weeks and then they'll disappear. And you find this time of the year they'll be really bad, and in early spring they're really bad. One thing you want to do, and something interesting about aphids, is you really want to encourage predator insects in your garden. So there's a few predators that will control aphids, and one of them is a wasp, a little mummifying wasp. What it does, it's a parasite. It's a parasitic wasp, and what it does, it lays its egg in the body of the aphid. So if you look closely at the aphids, you'll see these big fat aphids with a little hole in them, and that have died. They're not alive. And what that is that the wasp has hatched. It's eaten the inside. The larvae is eaten the inside. The egg's eaten this little inside of the larvae of the the aphid out, and then it's hatched. So they're beneficial for the garden. So having quite a few beneficial insects in the garden reduce the risk of, or reduce the amount of sprays used in the garden, will definitely cultivate those beneficial insects. And then hopefully your garden is a balance and you can hose off a few aphids and you don't have to spray anything that's going to cause a problem to anything else. Hopefully that helps, Carol. Aphids are a problem. So final comment from Pam, actually. Thank you so much for your wonderful advice. Oh, thank you, Pam. I'm an older novice gardener and I love the fact that I can rely on you. Now, that's just not me, Pam. That's everyone at the Garden Gurus. If you're inspired with the information that you hear here at Garden Gurus Facebook Live, don't forget to tune in to the Garden Gurus, because the Garden Gurus autumn series is back on Channel 9 this Saturday. Remember, you can always jump onto our website, catch up on previous episodes. I know I'm involved in it. There is so much information that goes into every story. So the previous stories are at thegardengurus.tv or our very own YouTube channel, thegardengurus.tv. Don't forget to subscribe. There's lots of information that even if you watch it now, I'm sure it's still relevant in a few months' time. Now, we'll be back for another episode next Monday at 12 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. If you live here in the West, of course, 2 hours before, set your alarm to 10 o'clock in the morning. Grab a cup of tea and you can maybe enjoy out in the garden and listen to what's happening across the country. We'll inspire you with a Garden Gurus or Garden Express offer. I'm sure we'll find some interviews that will be able to hopefully help you in the garden. And that's it for today. Thanks for today's episode of the Garden Gurus Live. Absolutely love it. Love that you're part of it as well. And you can listen back to what we've talked about today, today's live stream, and catch up on previous episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast and Audible. Now, look forward to it very much. We'll see you again on Monday at midday next Monday. That is Australian Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget Mother's Day. Mother's Day is a fantastic time to maybe celebrate with a plant, something that will look fantastic for many months to come. Enjoy your week. Hopefully enjoy the rain, the sunshine, wherever you are in Australia. Don't forget to enjoy your garden. Thank you.
Visit the Garden Gurus online store and browse through a collection of high-quality, German-made Wolf Garden tools. You'll also find a range of books with information to help create and maintain a beautiful garden. You can also access the online store on the Garden Gurus Facebook page.